Hi everyone, my name is Abhishek Jain, and in today's video we're gonna see one of the Python library which is called as Bandit, and this library is actually used for a static code analyzer to figure out the vulnerabilities in our Python code, right? I started using this library 2 years back, and I really find this library useful in order to fix the vulnerabilities in the earlier stage of the development rather than waiting for the last moment, SecOps report during their scan that, okay, we have this library which has this issue, or we have this piece of code which has this kind of vulnerabilities, and we have to fix them at the later stage, right? So that's one thing, and there are other reason as well that why I like this library, because I found that a lot of people copy paste the code from Stack Overflow, and nowadays ChatGPT is also giving us a lot of code, and those code unintentionally has some kind of vulnerabilities which we don't even realize, because our primary focus is to either fix a bug or build the functionality as soon as possible, right? So unintentionally we have a lot of vulnerabilities, but since we have a lot of other framework which can figure out all those vulnerabilities before we push that into the either a production environment or the non-production environment. But still, I mean, if we can be more cognizant by using these library, which almost every programming language has, I think we can reduce the rework in a very significant manner. And I think I really find this library useful, and let's see with the demo first, and then I will cover a few theoretical aspect which I feel that every software developer should understand in terms of what exactly the vulnerabilities is, what are the important websites which actually maintains all the vulnerabilities and all this stuff, and what are main important theoretical concept related to the vulnerabilities, right? So before we get into that theory part, let's first see the demo of the library. So I'm using my PyCharm. I created the project with Python underscore bandit, and I have already installed bandit. You can always find this. It's Bandit. You can go to the Google, and you can search for Bandit and PyPI, and you will find this. Documentation is also very good. I mean, if you want to follow this, you can do this. Let's see. I mean, we already have this installed. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create a one simple file, and I'm just gonna say SQL injection. Okay, and I just get some interesting code for SQLite. Let me just copy paste this code, this piece of code. I'm just going to explain in real quick what this code is actually doing. If you just see, here is the function where I'm initializing the SQLite database, which is a light-based database. You don't have to do anything specific to install this. Whatever the Python installation you have, it comes with that. So you can use this line of code as is, creating a cursor, then I'm selecting, the data from the table called users. And I think we don't have a database creation here. So I think I can quickly create this. I can borrow these 3 line of code here, and I can put it here, so that this query can be run, which is a select. So what I'm doing in these 3 line of code is I'm just creating a table, inserting 2 records, and I'm just trying to select the records, right? This is what I'm doing here. So if you just see this query, I just wanted you to pay attention to this line of code. I'm using a f string, and I'm replacing a username as a parameter, and this parameter is being passed to my function, right? So here I'm trying to execute this function, which this variable, and if you see how I'm defining this variable, I'm saying in double quotes, right? This is my content which I'm feeding in, right? Which says that example single quotes, what does it mean? It's going to replace, after this line, if this content, it's going to replace username, and then I'm just closing the single quote, and then I'm introducing this or, right? This or, and then we are saying this 1 is equal to 1, string 1 is equal to 1, which is always gonna be true. So what I'm saying, if table, I'm select all the records from the table user, if it has username example or the next condition, which is always going to be true. So even if your user table doesn't have a username with example, still this query is going to return you all the records, right? So let's see this in action first. Python SQL injection. See, I just try to run this and see what I'm getting here. We are getting a lot of records, all the records, right? Let's see if I just put, you know, so basically, if you just see the records which we are getting, there is no record which example as a username, right? If you just see the structure, the table structure I created very simple, username and a password, right? And I just kept very simple, test1 test, right? So that doesn't matter. But the summary is this table doesn't have an example as a user, but still you are getting all the records. So what does it mean? It means that this logic was written by us in the assumption that, user will only get an authenticated record dedicated to the specific user. But since we are using a f string, which is very vulnerable for the SQL injections, then the moment someone realized that, okay, if they pass this value, then they can get the entire record, right? So that is how hacker works in the real time, right? They try to put all the assumptions, all the ways through which they can hack the system, right? So they just try multiple things, and wherever they get through the system, they use that to exploit the system, right? So this is what this code is actually doing. Now if before putting this code into the production, right, if I use this command, which is, let me just clear this, bandit and r, which is stand for recursive option, and then if I just feed in the SQL injection, let's see what happens. It runs through the code. You can see here we have test result which says, okay, issue, right? It says that B608, which is the identifier, hard-coded SQL expression, possible SQL injection vector through the string-based query construction, severity is medium, right, and confidence is low. We're going to talk about this in a bit, right? First we have to just understand, then we will go through all the theoretical concept, right? Then we have the CWE. CWE stand for the common weakness expressions, right? Enumeration basically. And then we have a link. We can click on this. We can reach to the what this link says. Right, so we have this common weakness enumeration. Here we can read it through. I mean, what this SQL injection gonna be used by the hackers or the unauthorized intruder to gain the access to the system, or they can do some malignant thing to our system which we don't want them to do, right? Then we have this bandit. Bandit also have its own ways to define the corresponding unique ID. If I just click on this, we can see the bandit B608 related information. You can just read through all those things, and this will provide you what all possible ways through which you can write your queries, which is going to be vulnerable, right? So now we know, right? If you just see the description, right, which says that, okay, if you're gonna use this one, it is going to be have a severity medium and the confidence is low, right? So, and then it says how many lines of code just scanned, run through the matrix, and here we have the final issues, right? Total issues by severity and total issues by the confidence, right? And these are the two concepts which we need to understand, the severity and the confidence, right? But that we're gonna see in the later section, right? But definitely we have to understand what is severity, what is the significance of that, and what is confidence, and what is the significance of that, right? That's one thing. The other thing is, I have written some more code. Okay, so I think if you are in Python programming and doing a lot of automation, I would assume that you would have used this sub process, right? Sub process. So let me just put sub process vulnerabilities, right? And if I just save it, right, and if I run this bandit minus r against with sub process program, let's see what happens. Okay, now you can see we have a lot of things, right? We have 3 medium, 5 high. Interesting, right? Let's assume that we always in a situation where we want to execute some system commands, and we use sub process, right? And if you are in testing world or the test automation, then you would be using the sub process a lot, especially in the distributed system testing, right? Because there you have to deal with a lot of system level commands, and you have to execute them on operating system on a remote machines. Sometimes you take the SSH and then you execute some queries over there. You take your code to the remote machine. So there are multiple ways, right? And there would be a situation where you have to use this sub process, right? Sub process is very, very vulnerable if you are not using very safest way, right? You are actually just opening up your system for the hacker to get into your system and do the things which you don't want any outsider to do in your system, right? And that's the reason I just write some lines of code. These one you can ignore for now because I am having a file path which is hard coded. Then I intentionally put this password because password is also sensitive information, temporary file, and then the file location being derived from the one of the variable which is hard coded in this file itself, right? The most important thing is the sub process where I'm calling checkout, and there are multiple ways through which you can execute the system commands, right? And I'm just using shell true and shell false. You can just read through all these options. Why do we have shell true and shell false? Because this is not the video to explain all those things, right? So coming back to the report which we got, right, which is interesting one, right? And it's having too much information, right? The first one, B404 blacklist, consider possible security implications associated with the sub-process module, right? Again, you have the CWE link. Then you have, if you want to get a more precise detail from the Bandit, you can just go through here, right? Then it says that, okay, this line of code, which is a file path, which you hard coded, right? Not a good thing to do. Same thing with the password, right? Same thing with the temporary file, right? And then the most important thing which I wanted to highlight here, this section, right, which is confidence is high, severity is low, but start process with partial path, starting a process with partial executable path, right? This one, again, sub process call with shell equals to true, right? And shell equals to false, right? Oh, too much, right? So we have 2 medium severity and 3 medium confidence and 5 high, right? Now, I mean, this is just a simple code which we have written, and we got these many, issues, right? So, but in real time, we have, a lot of directories, a lot of Python codes, thousands of lines, sometimes millions of lines. And if we run this, we're gonna get, crazy about that, right? So there is an option which we can use. We can run this Bandit to the sub process one, and we can say F, which is stand for format, F JSON. I want a JSON format output, and then dash O, which gives us, okay, which report you want, right? So report name, just, I mean, in which file you want a report. So Bandit, the Python file name, then the format in which you want your output to be created, and the output file name, right? So I can say sub process vulnerabilities report, right? Let's see. There should be a file created, yes. So let me just go here. So we have got this file. Let me open in the Notepad++ so that we can just read through this, right? So this is how we can see. Now we got, yes, JSON format for all the information which we have. We can see we have total 5 high confidence, 3 medium confidence, 6 low severity, 2 medium severity, right? It's the same info, but it's in a JSON format, which we are seeing here in a PyCharm terminal, right? So this is how we got all these, right? How to fix it, right? How to fix them, right? So to fix them, we have to analyze the code, what precisely we are trying to do, right? We are listing, the directory, right? So this is where you have to be a little bit more innovative to see what exactly you are trying to achieve and why you are using this sub process. You should not be using something which is going to give unauthorized access to the intruder, right? So this is what you have to take care. So you have to fix all those vulnerabilities, not all of them, but if you are 100% sure, right, the way you are going to execute this command, right, which is simple listing and just scraping something, right? If you are 100% sure that there is no way that this command can be changed and this command can be run from a different location from where it can give, access to your files and all this stuff, right? If you are 100% sure, then definitely you want, your Bandit module to ignore this, right? If you want to ignore this, then the simple thing is what you can do is you can go to the line of code which is actually being reported as an issue or the vulnerabilities. You have to just put hash nosec, right? Same thing, if I just put hash nosec here, and if I run the same command, let's see what happens. Now see, we got less number of issues, right? Because we said to the Bandit that okay, even if these two line of code which you reported as an issue, I analyzed them and I figured it out. No one can use this to exploit, to get unauthorized access to the system. So I said that okay, though you have reported it's good, but I think it's not something which can be exploited by the unauthorized user, right? So that's the reason I just put nosec, right? So this is how you have to do this. Similarly, if I just put this nosec for every place, right? I'm not saying you have to do this, right? Because this is something where you are actually saying that you have analyzed it, but you are saying that okay, we are okay with this, right? This is what actually you mean to say, right? The sub process one is still, so sub process itself is a very, it's not a good thing to use. That's one way where you feel that, okay, few lines of code reported as an issue, you analyze it and you figure it out, okay, no, this is not something which is gonna be a cause for the concern, right? The other thing is what you can do is, this is one thing, again, it's very tedious if you know, okay, you have to put, a lot of nosec, right? So what you can do is you can get the code name, whatever the code, being reported by Bandit. And for example, right, if I come down here, I can extract the, I can extract the code. Where is my code? B108, which is test ID, right? So B108, right? So the other thing which I can do is while running this report, right, I can say dash s option and then I can say B108. What does it mean? It's going to ignore this 108, right? And let's see what all issues we are getting. We are getting 105. The other one is B404. So if we want, we can ignore them as well by saying B404. The other one which we got is B105. Right, let's see what happens. Now we just, so there are two ways, right? So let's assume that, we ran the Bandit report, we got a lot of issues, we figured out, all those issues which, is being reported. It's something which we are going to use internally, and it is not exposed to a lot of people. It is just one or two people are going to use, and we are okay that because we are going to use that in a very limited machine, in a very isolation, in a very isolated environment, and we are 100% sure it's not going to hit anything, and we are not going to promote this code into any sensitive environment like non-production or the production environment. This is something which we are using internally to create some internal reports if that's an issue, or there is a consensus among your IT team or your security personnel that okay, this is not something which we are going to expose to the public, and public by many means going to get the access to this piece of code, then we can ignore it and we can use it for some time and then we can scrap it. So it's completely up to your group, your security team to discuss about all those things which you want to handle, which you don't want to handle, right? And it's again, but if it is a publicly exposed code, then you have to address as many as you can, right? And you have to be very cognizant. I mean, which one you are ignoring, right? I would suggest don't ignore anything until or unless you have, the consensus among the majority of people from the security team or your, senior management and everyone, right? Let's say that's enough from the demo, and there are a lot of options which you can go through the Bandit documentation, read the docs, and you can get a lot of options from there. Now the another thing which I really want to understand, all the software developer is because you will heard a lot of time, vulnerabilities, CBEs, CWEs, and X-rays, scan report, and all this stuff. What happens in real time, when we try to push the code to any non-production environment. We always scan our code and then we get a scanner reports, right? In the scanner report, we get this high CBE, which we need to address, right? High, medium, and low, right? If it is a medium and low, then we can ignore for now, but again, it's need a consensus. Everybody has to be agreed on that. But if it is a high or critical, then you have to fix it, right? Now the question comes in, what is the CBE? What is the CWE, right? This is, um, uh, this is a non-profit organization basically. In the US, they just maintain this database. They actually just keep a track of all the known vulnerabilities in the system, and there is a very good documentation. If you just go to this CBE, common weakness enumeration, there is a lot of interesting information. If you want to go through, you can go through with this, and then we have the CBE, again, a lot of interesting information about all those things. And the way, you can just go to this link is specific to a specific vulnerabilities by getting that as a part of your Bandit report. And then you can come here and you can just precisely understand each and every aspect or the information which is, documented here, right? um, uh, then some important thing, it's just a theory. If you are interested, you can just try to understand it. I just extracted from the chat GPT response or the Wikipedia. I really feel that, okay, we should at least read through and try to understand this, because this is really important for each and every software developer to understand all these things. So vulnerabilities, in general terms, it's just a flaw. When I say flaw, it means that we as a software developer actually building all the computer systems and the application. So we have to be very cognizant whenever we are taking a code from someone else or copying, pasting something from online or the chat GPT, whatever it is. We have to be very cognizant. We have to be very analytical, like what kind of code we are writing in, right? And then we have to see the possibility how that code can be exploited, right? So this is something which we have to take care, right? Exploit is, if you just read through the definition, it's very straightforward and very simple. Is a piece of code or a technique used to take advantage of a vulnerabilities and gain unauthorized access or control over system, right? So basically, if you introduce some unintentional flaw in your code which can be utilized by hacker or unauthorized person, then he can exploit that to just get the unauthorized access. I think log4j is the best example. F-string is very prone towards introducing a vulnerability. So F-string in Python, you have to be very careful. Subprocess is another one. SQL injection, I think relational database has done a lot to handle that situation, but we have to also be very careful, like, how we are preparing our statement. We have to use the prepared statement as much as possible, and we have to use, our ORM modules, as much as possible, so that, we cannot get into a situation where it can be exploited. Right. This is just to main important terminology which we actually use in vulnerabilities word is a common weakness enumeration. I just told you the website. You can go through that and you can try to understand that. And then another one is the common vulnerabilities in the exposure, which is the most important one. And CVE, it has a unique identifier, and this every identifier has a category, like whether it's a critical, high, medium, and low. If your code is being reported as a high CV or critical, then definitely you have to fix it. This code cannot be in a production environment, right? I think that's pretty much it which I wanted to cover for this video. The one thing which I wanted to tell you, this Bandit is just for the static code analysis. There are two more important libraries which I use very frequently. The one is the safety, another one is the check, which is built by Facebook, and those two libraries are very good. So if you use this Bandit, safety, and check in a conjunction, I think you can reduce to have the vulnerabilities in your code or your application, right? So probably in next coming videos I will be covering safety as well as the check, which is built by Facebook, very important one. Very interesting library to use and very, very powerful, right? Because it's provide you a lot of vulnerabilities which can only be figured out when you actually run your code. So it's try to figure it out your sequence, how your logic is dependent to the other part of code, but kind of a runtime, logic be analyzed by this Pyre check which built by Facebook. So interesting one to see. Probably in a future I will be publishing a video on safety as well as on Pyre check. So thanks for watching this, and as always, if you have any feedback or suggestion or the comment, please feel free to put that into the comment section. And stay healthy and keep learning new things.